all regions are projected to experience negative growth in 2020. The small island developing states of the Caribbean are standing on the precipice of the greatest risk to our economies and societies in modern history, with an expected contraction of some 8%. Mr. Speaker, that is the environment that we are in. That is the environment that we are going to be in for the coming months, and I suspect perhaps coming years, but certainly for the remainder of this budgetary period. And it is, Mr. Speaker, that grim picture is further demonstrated by the Coronavirus 2020 live tracker, which I suspect the figure has increased. But as of yesterday evening, it was recording in its report on the worldwide total figures some 18,444,642 confirmed cases of coronavirus SARS-CoV-2, otherwise known as COVID-19, and some 697,189 deaths from this dreadful disease. Mr. Speaker, if that is not a quasi-apocalyptic circumstance and landscape, then I don't know what is. But that is the circumstance in which the budget must be contextualized and appreciated. And that is a circumstance in which the magnitude of the task and the rough road that lies ahead of us as a country and as a people must be considered. And it is in that circumstance that the efficacy of the 2020-21 budget to our journey into these uncharted waters ahead of us must be considered. Mr. Speaker, in these extraordinary and uncertain times, the budget has sought to keep the engine running, so to speak, whilst at the same time securing the launch pad for our economy into the future. It has taken due cognizance of the theme of the government on assuming office or re-entering office subsequent to the December 2019 election, the theme of a dynamic Dominica, and it has embraced that. And for me, one of the most exciting features of the budget and of the new program is the digital economy. Mr. Speaker, that digital economy is in total sync with where we are developmentally as a people here in this country, but also more widely in the context of the international community. It provides exciting opportunities for individuals as well as groups. And I am hopeful that our people, and it seems to me from what I can gather that there are many in our midst who have great skills, most of it acquired by self-tuition, but skills which can be enhanced and improved to contribute to the Dominican economy and to, of course, the well-being, physical and financial, of the individuals themselves. We have also seen, Mr. Speaker, tremendous development in the field of health, the expanding modernization of our health facilities. These have been spoken about by the previous speakers. The progress in the modernization and construction of the Dominica China Friendship Hospital, the numerous health clinics, some deemed to be smart and others perhaps less so, but all, Mr. Speaker, designed to improve the health of the nation. We've also seen, Mr. Speaker, the establishment of the National Health Commission, the NHC, and have begun to realize that that entity and the work that it is doing with a view to improving the health sector and the delivery of health to all of us in Dominica is tremendous. The National Health Commission, in its work, which I understand its full report will be delivered a little later this year, shortly. But in its work, it has identified and the need for legislation, and the Chambers of the Attorney General has been effective in assisting with several bills required to enable the vision for health sector reform, or the rollout of the health sector reform program, to take effect. And I name a few: the medical profession bill, the nursing profession bill, the hospital authority bill, and the pharmacy bill. Those 4 bills, along with other bills and regulations that will be required, will be introduced shortly and will be necessary for us as a people to be able to experience the significant improvement in our health sector. I hope also that the reforms that will come with this program will minimize and reduce the occurrences of events that lead to suits by members of the public. I speak specifically of medical negligence suits and other similar suits that the Chambers of the Attorney General from time to time have to deal with, and on occasion can cost us as taxpayers unnecessary expenditure. Other critical areas that have been addressed in this budget, Mr. Speaker, and the relevant ministers and others have spoken of them, so I shall not go into detail, but agriculture in particular, housing, education, trade, public works, and the environment, to name a few. All of these areas, as has been clear from the contributions of the various ministers, have been working feverishly over the past months, weeks, in Dominica. And the budget is and will contribute significantly to their continued important work in ensuring the further development, safety, and well-being of us in Dominica. Mr. Speaker, in the light of all that I've said, I noted that the budget address referred to what is termed as the disaster resilience strategy, and highlighted that that was a 3-pillared strategy: structural resilience, financial resilience, and post-disaster resilience. But, Mr. Speaker, without needing to have financial acumen, it is apparent that these pillars are all of great relevance to Dominica and its development going forward. And I would say, Mr. Speaker, that the development of this particular strategy is very timely, very relevant, and a relevant tool in the arsenal of the government and the country in proceeding on into the turbulent waters and uncharted waters that are ahead of us over the coming months and years. Mr. Speaker, I would like to turn to matters that are relevant to the budget, but tangentially so, and perhaps more directly relevant to us as a people and to our country, and indeed to this House. Mr. Speaker, during the budget debate, members of the opposition, some of them, sought to address the budget, in some instances by way of criticism which, in my humble view, was not what one would call constructive criticism. In some instances, it was clearly destructive or negative criticism. And regrettably, from my perspective, over the years that I've been here, a significant deficiency insofar as I'm concerned, by way of contributions made from the opposite side, is that all too frequently they lack suggestions. Now, I understand, Mr. Speaker, that a member on the opposite side of the House may feel, or indeed the opposition benches as a whole, may feel that they do not want to give whatever bright ideas they feel they have to the government. That's understandable. But, Mr. Speaker, there must at least be one suggestion that can be made as to how something that is presented by the government could be improved to the benefit of the people, or indeed one prize policy or program that could be presented that can work, a viable program, so that at least the populace can see that if they're given the opportunity, they might be able to do something. After all, we all live on this island. We all benefit from the good, and we all suffer from the bad. Mr. Speaker, I'm particularly concerned about two events that have occurred over recent times. The first, Mr. Speaker, is and I think the House is the place to address it, the attacks, verbal attacks on the judiciary. And Mr. Speaker, from my perspective, that is a matter of great concern to me, and I think it should be of great concern to all members of this honourable House, and indeed to all citizens and residents of Dominica. The courts are essential to the proper functioning of any society. And naturally, Mr. Speaker, we will not agree with all decisions of the courts all the time. I, as an attorney, appear in court from time to time, and I do not always agree with the decision that is handed down by the court. But, Mr. Speaker, that's not a problem. We all are entitled to have an opinion. We all are entitled, by way of our Constitution, to express our opinion, provided and subject to whatever limitations or prohibitions are provided for either in the Constitution or in some statutory provision. But, Mr. Speaker, what we are not entitled to do is to embark upon vitriolic and wholly unjustified attacks, verbal or otherwise, on the integrity and character of our judges. Judges, Mr. Speaker, are not permitted and or able to defend themselves against attacks. And it is totally inappropriate for any member of the society, of the community, to engage in those types of behaviors. And we, as members of this House, I believe, Mr. Speaker, must condemn in no uncertain terms that type of behavior. Recently, Mr. Speaker, a particular individual who frequently espouses views, often vile views, engaged in a diatribe of vile garbage, including false reference to judges in the region being killed. And that individual, Mr. Speaker, appeared, certainly to me at least, to be advancing this falsehood as a justification for claiming that judges were not beyond a similar fate in this jurisdiction. As far as I'm concerned, Mr. Speaker, as I think what I've said so far makes clear, this type of behavior, this type of language, has no place whatsoever in a civilized society, and certainly not here in Dominica. This type of rhetoric, Mr. Speaker, no matter how frustrated an individual may be, cannot be tolerated. It is not language that is likely to bring any good to us as a people and as a country. And indeed, if we allow it to flourish in our midst, it is likely to undermine our society. It is likely that what today are words will tomorrow turn into deeds. Mr. Speaker, I raised my concerns about that particular incident with appropriate authorities, and I expect that this and other matters of this kind will receive the appropriate attention that it deserves. It's not for me to dictate to the various individuals how they should deal with the matter, but I have made my concern very clear that I believe that that type of behavior is totally unacceptable in our society, and as far as I'm concerned, it crosses boundaries. In my view, probably criminal boundaries of incitement, perhaps other offenses, but certainly, in my view, it is also a contempt of court in the manner in which it was expressed. That is for others to decide. I will continue to raise my concerns where I feel it appropriate to do so. But I must say this, Mr. Speaker, that I cannot help but observe from where I am that there appears, and I may be wrong, but it appears to me that there is a certain timidity, a hesitancy by some of our officials to take the necessary action that is required to deal with this and other type of inappropriate behavior. A society is as strong as its weakest link. That also means that as a society, we have to be able and willing, where necessary, to take action that may not be popular, but it is the action that is right at the particular point in time. We are a small and interwoven society, Mr. Speaker. We cannot allow these types of behavior and occurrence to perpetuate in our midst, because we do not have the size to allow the impact to dissipate, as would be the case in the big societies, the big countries with hundreds of thousands and millions of people. We are a handful of people. Something happens in Portsmouth, it's felt almost immediately in Grand Bay, in Marigot, in Castle Bruce, or vice versa. We are one people, we are one pot, and it's a relatively small pot. We have to have a situation where we can express ourselves, but we express ourselves in a manner that allows, of course, someone to know we are unhappy if we are unhappy, but allows that we can operate as a cohesive society. I accept, Mr. Speaker, that it's not every transgression that must be visited with an arrest or a charge or even some other more punitive action. And indeed, Mr. Speaker, all of us noted that you in this House demonstrated that level of, if you will, tempering justice with mercy. I'm not sure I would necessarily have done the same, but I understand and I accept that there are circumstances in which that is appropriate. But, Mr. Speaker, it is also appropriate that where justice is tempered with mercy, you explain to somebody what is wrong, what is the error of their ways, why they shouldn't do X, why they should do Y instead, and they choose to do Z. At some point, Mr. Speaker, there has to be a reckoning. They have to be brought to account. And I, Mr. Speaker, have no doubt and no fear of putting forward that view. Mr. Speaker, I would say, Mr. Speaker, that that is the summary in relation to the judiciary. It may well be that if this continues, it may be a matter that may have to be, that the government may wish to look at whether it should be a matter that forms part of a debate, that we have, as it were, a cohesive view from the House on that type of behavior and how it should be approached. Because we have to give our judges a level of protection and at least a sense. Because there's no 100% protection for anything, but at least they have to have a sense, Mr. Speaker, that we the people appreciate what they're doing, the service they provide, and that we the people are prepared to the extent that we are capable of doing so, of supporting them in trying to discharge a very difficult duty that they have. Mr. Speaker, the second concern that I have is more directly related to this House, and I touched on it a moment ago, which is the behavior of some of the members of this House, members who are supposed to be honorable members. but their behavior oftentimes, Mr. Speaker, is anything but honorable. Mr. Speaker, in this particular instance, I refer specifically to the member for Roseau North, Yanni Lugay, and his utterly reprehensible and unacceptable behavior in this House last week. Mr. Speaker, that type of behavior is not acceptable anyway, and it most certainly is not acceptable in the Honourable House of Assembly. I alluded to it, or referred to it a moment ago, Mr. Speaker, when I referred to your what I term charitable handling, and that is not charitable in a pejorative or critical sense. It's just to say that you were very kind to him. I'm not sure from his response, Mr. Speaker, whether he necessarily appreciated that kindness, because even in your extending that kindness to him, he seemed almost incapable of accepting it. But Mr. Speaker, I guess we are all adults and we all have to make our own decisions as to how we deal with situations. But Mr. Speaker, I place on record here and now, as I have done previously, that so far as I am concerned, I will always be of the view that that type of behavior, that type of language that was espoused by the member for Roseau North last week has no place in the House. Indeed, it has no place in Dominica. And I trust, I hope, probably against hope, but I hope that the honourable member, because you gave him back his honour, has recognized that he needs to do something about his behavior. He needs to find some means, some mechanism of controlling himself when he comes to this House, to control the frustrations. It must be frustrating to time after time seek to move from right to left, from front to back, from back to front, and be continuously unable to do so. But even in the midst of that understandable frustration, Mr. Speaker, it is not acceptable, nor I strongly urge must this House allow any such repetition to go unpunished. Mr. Speaker, in conclusion, it is appropriate for me to acknowledge and give thanks that Dominica, praise be to God, has thus far been mercifully spared the harsher realities of the effects of COVID-19. We were fortunate to have only 18 recorded cases and no deaths. All of those who were diagnosed have been treated successfully and have recovered. That, Mr. Speaker, is a tremendous grace that we have received. The Minister of Health, the officials of the Ministry for Health, the health professionals and staff generally of the Ministry for Health, in collaboration with numerous other professionals and non-professionals, have done a tremendous job of preparing the country, firstly, and preparing for the inevitable arrival on our shores of COVID-19, and subsequently in identifying, tracing, treating, and managing COVID-19 once it arrived here. They must be highly commended for their efforts and their success, Mr. Speaker. The citizens of Dominica and residents also deserve generally to be commended for their acceptance and adherence to the advice, guidance, and protocols of the health and other authorities in this regard. We cannot, however, Mr. Speaker, become complacent. We would realize that we have, or are in the process of opening our borders and our economy once again. We hear what's happening in other jurisdictions close to us and far from us, following their reopening. And there's no reason, Mr. Speaker, for us to think that if we do not take proper cognizance of the seriousness of the disease, COVID-19, that we too will be afflicted by high levels of infection. I am trusting that we will continue to be as mindful of the necessary protocols as we have been up to this point, and that we will be spared any great number of occurrences of this dreadful disease. It is, in my view, virtually inevitable once you open up that there will be cases arriving on our shore. But I hope and trust that we will continue to exercise the level of management and discipline that we have exercised up to this point, so that we will be able to ride out this particular storm without too much damage to us as a people. Mr. Speaker, it would be remiss of me not to take this opportunity to specifically and expressly single out and praise the Department of Government and its diligent and efficient staff, which, despite its hand being in some way, shape or form required and present in virtually every project, program, initiative or undertaking of the government, and for that matter, not infrequently statutory bodies, rarely gains a mention or acknowledgement of its existence or contribution in public fora. Mr. Speaker, as the more astute listeners and viewers to my words would probably already have deduced, I am referring to the Office of the Attorney General. The Solicitor General acting, the Senior State Attorney acting, the State Attorneys, the Chief Parliamentary Counsel, the Parliamentary Council, and administrative staff have played a critical role, among other things, in the drafting of legislation necessary for putting in place the legislative framework required for the lawful implementation of the actions, processes, and procedures needed to enable the effective control of COVID-19. Their continued engagement in this exercise going forward will be required, and I trust will be as diligent as it has been hitherto. Mr. Speaker, with those few words, I give this budget, this 2020-21 fiscal year budget, my full and unreserved support. Thank you.
I recognize the Honorable Senior Minister and Minister for Housing and Urban Development, Honorable Reginald Austrie. Proceed.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to give my full support to this budget as presented by the Prime Minister. It's not working.
AG, okay.
A few days ago. Mr. Speaker, I promise to be brief with my contributions. Having listened to the contribution made by the members on our side, I'm satisfied, Mr. Speaker, that they have not only defended the budget well, but they have given a good reflection of the stewardship of the ministries in the last 6 months they have been operating. And it tells me, Mr. Speaker, that the future of this country is dazzling bright with these young, bright people on the side of the Dominica Labour Party, on the side of the government. And Mr. Speaker, I speak to Minister Kasani and Melissa and Oscar and Rosalind and Ed and Shakira and the member for the senator from Marigot. Mr. Speaker, you will agree that they really blew our minds in this parliament, Mr. Speaker, and I'm sure that their contribution must have been shocking to many on the opposition side. And this, Mr. Speaker, is not an accident. This is a carefully selected team by our visionary leader, Roosevelt Skerrit. And Mr. Speaker, when we announced our team for the last elections, many people were very skeptical. Some of these young people had not been seen. Some of them had not been heard of before. And we don't know how the Prime Minister was able to pull them out from the little corners where they were and brought them into the spotlight. I knew Minister Kasani Laville very well, but I knew him as an engineer. going about his quiet business and doing his thing. And, Mr. Speaker, for want of no contradiction, I believe that Kasani has risen to the level of almost anybody that you've seen in this parliament as far as his delivery and his contribution has been concerned. Mr. Speaker, I also want to tie this in with some of the budgetary provisions made in this year's budget. And I would like to describe this budget as the young people's budget, Mr. Speaker, which will be administered by the young people of this country. Too many times, Mr. Speaker, we have heard young people complaining that there's nothing in the budget for them, there's nothing in there. And, Mr. Speaker, when I look at some of those provisions, I can see young people written all over them, Mr. Speaker. And, Mr. Speaker, I want to ask myself the question, what has happened to the opposition? Mr. Speaker, there it is. You have an opposition who have lost 5 elections, or maybe 6, with a reducing majority. So you cannot be on the ascendancy. And having moved from 6 seats to 3 seats, after 5 times, you would like to ask yourself, where is this party headed? You, Mr. Speaker, can either seek to rebuild, like we had to do in the Labour Party at one time, when we were not doing so well. We could hardly find candidates, but we had to bite the bullet, Mr. Speaker, and go out there and rebuild our party. It took us 20 years to rebuild the Dominican Labour Party, to take us to the level where we are today, that we're almost untouchable, Mr. Speaker, in this parliament and in this country. Mr. Speaker, or you can let the thing fall apart. What route did the opposition choose, Mr. Speaker? I believe they chose to let this thing fall apart. Because you have an opportunity to appoint and to find young, energetic, vibrant people to move this thing. And later down in the budget, Mr. Speaker, I will point out to you that this management of this economy over the next couple of years will call for energy and vibrancy, Mr. Speaker. And you have to choose 4 or 5 senators, Mr. Speaker. And in your pick, Mr. Speaker, in your surveying the landscape of your political party, in surveying the landscape of the country, the only 2 suitable senators you could find are persons past their 60, approaching 70, Mr. Speaker. One of them, Mr. Speaker, still lost in the 1960s in the days of Elvis Presley and Elton John. Speaker, in fact, and it's not a criticism, Madam Speaker. That's the reality. These are retired people. And there is room for retired people in this society. But in this young country, Madam Speaker, if you take us from Erica, and many people like to take us back from Erica, but I'd like to go back to Ophelia. No, the trough. Well, I'm not going back after Ophelia 2010. But we can go back to the Christmas trough. And many people forgetting the damage that was done to this country infrastructurally and socially by that trough. Many people forget, Mr. Speaker, that we had to buy furniture for people in their homes that were totally destroyed and destroyed by the trough. Mr. Speaker, but we don't go that far. And Mr. Speaker, it's going to call this period, and we can talk to COVID a little later. This period is going to call for energy, Mr. Speaker, and strength to move this country forward, Mr. Speaker. So that is one lost in the 50s and the 60s. And then you have the other one who is forever angry, Mr. Speaker. Forever angry, Mr. Speaker. And I just don't want to say, I'm from Castle Bruce. There's some things I know, Teacher Bond, there's some things we know that could be the underlying cause of this anger, Mr. Speaker. But it seems to be getting worse. Because even after, Mr. Speaker, Senator John Finn asked you to rule on the fact whether I can call Castle Bruce my constituency. And she said, I will not speak until you answer me. And she stood up there, Mr. Speaker. And when you answered, Mr. Speaker, that's when the lady got really angry. So don't tell me what you want. I say, I'm the copper rep, I'm the power rep, and I'm the power rep, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, that is the caliber of people that the leader of the opposition could find to make senators in this new and dynamic, changing Dominica, Mr. Speaker. And I have a serious problem with that. But not only that, Mr. Speaker, and I believe, Mr. Speaker, we have to be very careful of how we treat this parliament. Mr. Speaker, these senators, the only work they do for the state is to come to parliament. Is to come to parliament. You have to come to parliament. This session of parliament, the budget, is probably the most important agenda item on the parliamentary agenda for the year, Mr. Speaker. Yet still, you have a high level of absenteeism in the parliament, Mr. Speaker. Well, you're not elected. So let us say the leader of the opposition has to go to Marigot to visit people in his office that is always closed. But let's just say that. Let us say the Danny Luge has to go and visit the sick, even for Rosenhoff, the sick and the short and so. But what is it does a senator have to do on a daily basis that would merit him or her getting a salary from the treasury and not showing up to parliament at the most important session of this parliament? Mr. Speaker, the senator from Williams or whatever, Sanford, she walked in, but where is Masley? What is it that the Senator Masley is doing that he cannot find himself in parliament today? Why is it that the member of Senator John Finn and Senator, whatever her name is, Francisca, they were missing in the parliament for 2 whole days, Mr. Speaker, 2 whole days. They spoke and they left. And there's a mechanism in this parliament, if you want time off, there's a way in which you can ask time off. If you can come to parliament, you can ask the speaker, and the speaker will read and say, well, I just got a note from Senator John Finn that she cannot come to the parliament today, and so on and so on. Total disrespect for the people of this country and for the parliament of this country, Mr. Speaker. And these 2 senators, they were teachers. They were involved in education, teaching people's children, Mr. Speaker. And that is the example they are showing. But what else you expect? A low energy level, like a certain president would say, Mr. Speaker. You cannot blame them because they're really not supposed to be here, Mr. Speaker. These people should be at home chilling out, relaxing. And if the Senator John Finn want to go and look after bananas, it's fine. We don't really have a problem. Let her go and do bananas. Mr. Speaker, the only thing, we must impose some sort of price control on her bananas, Mr. Speaker, because she comes.
Yes, Senator Sanford. No, come forward. Honorable Austri, yield to her for a minute.
Point of order.
Yes, standing order.
44-4.
44-4.
Excuse me, sir. It says it shall be out of order to use offensive and insulting or disrespectful. Excuse me. He's saying that these members are elderly. We have right now. No. Listen to me. Right now, the elderly population in Dominica is increasing. We have to respect our elderly people.
But Senator,
and there are people there are people and there are countries, they're increasing their retirement age right now because people are working at this age. We have to respect these people.
But Senator, so in regards to, Senator, I was speaking to you. You were on your feet. In regards to this standing order, it says that there shall be no use of offensive, insulting, or disrespectful language about members of this House against the House of Assembly. But I'm trying to see what exactly you think was disrespectful or offensive.
He has been attacking the Senator Francisca and Ernie based on their age, and I don't think that is right. That is not right at all. We have
Energy
people,
level, not age. I never mentioned the age. I never mentioned the age.
but you really and truly you're referring to the energy level.
But,
You are saying that the older people get, the less energetic they are. And this needs to stop.
Senator,
We have to respect our older people in Dominica. We have to respect our people.
Yeah, say, okay. Proceed, but let him put up the mic.
Thank
But
you.
let me,
You see, Mr. Speaker, that is a problem, we have in this place, Mr. Speaker. The member for Rotterdam, he came here and he called for civil war in this country. Mr. Speaker, having planned a demonstration outside of the parliament for the budget day, Mr. Speaker. He was totally rude and insultive to the chair, Mr. Speaker, to you, Mr. Speaker. He was shouting above his voice. The senator thought that was a good thing. He had nothing to say about it, and that was cool, Mr. Speaker. I never talk about no elderly. There is a place, Mr. Speaker, this government has shown the most love for the elderly in this country than any other government in the past. Mr. Speaker, when they were getting under the United Workers' Party $25 a month for papa's allowance, Mr. Speaker, we came in here and we raised that and we took it beyond that, Mr. Speaker, that our senior citizens who had not worked in their lifetime could receive 300 EC dollars from this government. That is our record, Mr. Speaker, on support for the elderly. Mr. Speaker, our centenarians under the United Workers' Party who die with no recognition under the United Workers' Party. This Labour government, recognizing the gem of these people to our country, we're not only paying them $500 a month for the rest of their life, but we're also providing them with decent homes and free cooking gas and people to help them, to wash them, to bathe them, to clothe them, Mr. Speaker. Come and tell me about elderly. Come and tell me about elderly. What's wrong with you? Mr. Speaker, this Labour Party government, Mr. Speaker, and it is the same senator, Mr. Speaker, who come to this parliament, talking about poverty and how people in Santoville are so poor, Mr. Speaker, when she is one of the major architects of poverty in that part of the constituency, because she had moved bananas beyond their reach, Mr. Speaker. Not even fig they could buy when they needed it the most, Mr. Speaker. Tell me about elderly.
Mr. Speaker, how can you allow the member to say that she is a major architect of poverty? That's imputing improper motive.
Senator,
How can
on
you
what
allow
standing
that?
order again? On what standing order? You need to quote your standing order.
You're not looking at me. Your eyes are glued on Mr. Austri. You are not looking at me. I've been standing up there.
It's a metaphor.
Excuse me?
Yeah.
No,
I mean, come
he
on.
is saying she's an architect of...
Yeah, it's just economics he's speaking.
But that's economic,
So
Mr. Speaker.
let's move on.
She is.
Member, take your seat and let him continue.
Mr. Speaker, after one of the most devastating weather events in the history of this country, in the history of the world, Madam Speaker, when people had no food to eat, the senator from Santoville was selling green bananas at $1 for 1 grain, Madam Speaker, of green bananas. $10 a hand, $15 a hand, $150 for a bunch of bananas, Mr. Speaker. Raise the price of bananas in this country.
Member, just an interjection. Let me just clarify something. So, Senator Sanford, so if the Honorable Austri makes a statement that a member of this Honorable House sold banana 1 grain for $1, that's a point of fact. So it is either correct or incorrect. Now, the member is in this House. This member could object and say that I did not sell it for $1, I sell it for $2 or I sell it for 50 cents. Now, on the matter, hold on. let me just clarify something. On the matter in regards to when he made an inference in regards to energy, he was tying it to the budget. And he was saying that for the future of this country, you need energy. So, I mean, be tempered with your intervention. Continue, Honorable Austri.
Mr. Speaker, this same senator, came here and accused members on the government side of using government material for their own personal use. A direct accusation, an incorrect accusation. The little senator had nothing to say about it. Mr. Speaker, Senator Sanford had nothing to say about it. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, the issue of the NEP, we have ventilated, I'm not going into that. But Mr. What struck me again at the contribution made by the Senator John Finn to one, where she was suggesting to this government that when we give students scholarship, we must bond them, Mr. Speaker. We must tie them to this country for 4 or 5 years, Mr. Speaker. An archaic system, Mr. Speaker. That was our recommendation for this budget. And to say further that the remittances that we got from overseas was of no use to this country, Mr. Speaker. I have it, I can quote her there, Mr. Speaker. The country needs medium, short-term terms, which is informed, and not the little cash that comes from overseas, Mr. Speaker. When during the last election, she went to Guadeloupe, Mr. Speaker, soliciting the same little cash from the people from the East to come back to vote for in the last election, Mr. Speaker. And she went to the United States, Mr. Speaker. She was carrying the box, Mr. Speaker, carrying the box on her head, collecting the little change overseas, and she comes in this parliament and tell the diaspora, to tell our Dominicans living overseas, that their little barrels and their little pittances, and they don't need to send it because it's of no use to us, we don't value it. That is what you are saying, Mr. Speaker. And we have to correct that record. We need to tell these people that their little contribution is very, very valuable, and we cherish it, Mr. Speaker. Because remittances in any economy makes a big difference, whether it's in Jamaica, in Trinidad, in Barbados, in St. Vincent, or in Dominica. Remittances makes a very, especially now, in these crucial times, Mr. Speaker, the little remittances we get from overseas goes a long way. We appreciate it, and we want to applaud our diaspora, our people living overseas, for remembering us down here in times of need, Mr. Speaker. That is why they will always come down to vote for us, Mr. Speaker, because we appreciate their contribution to the development of our country. Mr. Speaker, I'm not surprised that the opposition could not debate the budget. Because, Mr. Speaker, you could never imagine, at a time when you're coming from 2 years of Erica, 90% of your GDP destroyed. 2 years of Maria, 90% of your GDP destroyed. No, 250% of your GDP, the 225 destroyed, Mr. Speaker. COVID came, Mr. Speaker, and we have not been, even now, we cannot speak to the expenditure that we have to put out to deal with this COVID matter, Mr. Speaker. Because like many of us have said, that when you reopen the borders, you may well find yourself having to deal with this matter all over again. And for this government to come here, Madam Speaker, with these measures in this budget to bring relief and to move the economy forward,
Mr.
Speaker, the opposition cannot deal with the matter. Mr. Speaker, I'm surprised, because it was the leader of the opposition who came to this parliament and he was asking the government to find $300 million to deal with the COVID matter. He was saying, Mr. Speaker, that 15,000 people were going to be infected. He was saying that 7,000 were going to be hospitalized. And while he's saying that, the member for Roosevelt looking behind him, Mr. Speaker, because we're the vulnerable ones. People like me vulnerable, because I passed 55, climbing. I'm vulnerable, Mr. Speaker. And many of us who have reached that age group, we have to be concerned. He said that parliamentarians would die. That was the member for Rosenhoff in this parliament that many of us here will die, Mr. Speaker. And he was looking at his back, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the issue... What? Mr. Speaker,
Continue.
tell me, Mr. Speaker. We came here, the opposition have been asking for a stimulus package. It's like they created that word, stimulus, Mr. Speaker, for trying to force the government and trying to bring people out on the streets to riot for stimulus, Mr. Speaker. And in our wisdom, we said, look, we have to measure, we have to be tempered. We gave some relief, Mr. Speaker. Today, this Labour Party is offering to the people of Dominica a stimulus package in that budget, Mr. Speaker. Measures that are aimed to stimulate the economy. Measures aimed to bring relief to the people of this country, Mr. Speaker. And people talk about their hope. That budget goes beyond hope, Mr. Speaker. These are practical ways in which we can move our economy forward. Practical ways in which we can stimulate the economy, Mr. Speaker. It don't matter how much you have, unless the people are behind it, it will not make much sense. I remember the member for the senator, when he made his contribution, he agreed with the increase in resources for promotion of tourism. He said it's not enough. He would put more. But Mr. Speaker, no matter how much money you put into the promotion of Dominica, unless you can guarantee our visitors a safe stay, a welcoming country, a loving country, you can put how much money you want, they're not going to come because they don't feel safe. And Mr. Speaker, the member for the senator must say to the opposition, stop preaching hate and violence in this country. Because no matter how much we put in tourism, as long as we have these hates, as long as we have this calling for civil wars, as long as we have calling for demonstrations, as long as we keep calling for instability in the country, the tourists will not come, Mr. Speaker. They will not come, Mr. Speaker. And so, Mr. Speaker, when we left here the night, driving down, I was listening to the radio, my dial fell on Q95, and there was the leader of the opposition and the member for Rosenhoff encouraging, urging Dominicans to get out on the street, Mr. Speaker, to demonstrate against $64,000 rent he claimed that we were paying for the Prime Minister's home. Utter deception, Mr. Speaker. And he's saying, oh, Kerry getting $64,000, all you know vex yet? And where the 1.2 billion, all you know vex yet? Mr. Speaker, urging the people of Dominica to fight for issues that don't even exist. Mr. Speaker, going to the question of the Prime Minister's residence, they go through the estimates, Mr. Speaker. All have been said, so much have been said. Mr. Speaker, the issue of the residence for the Prime Minister is not an issue of cost for the leader of the opposition. The leader of the opposition does not want to see anybody live in decent accommodation, Mr. Speaker. When the Prime Minister's rent in Belfast was $3,000, he was making noise about it. When the Prime Minister's rent before the hurricane was $10,000 Mount Daniel, he was making trouble about it. When we constructed a residence for the President, he said that if he ever becomes Prime Minister, he will turn the President's residence into a cultural center. Mr. Speaker, into a cultural center. It appears to me that the leader of the opposition have serious problems. Our little housing, we cook it, we building for poor people of this country, Mr. Speaker. The opposition said when they get into government, they would stop the housing program because the houses we're building were too good for poor people. That was the opposition, Mr. Speaker. And they were wondering, oh, the people living upstairs, when they clean their fish, where they throw the water. That was the argument being put forward by the opposition. Why they will stop member for the senator You are part of a party, you are part of a cabal that does not want to see the Kalinago people have decent housing. That is what you should be concerned about.
Mr. Speaker, the member is imputing improper motive, and you are sitting there and doing nothing about it.
Imputing
Standing
improper
Order
motive. How?
44-6.
Imputing improper motive. How?
Of course.
Why did he say that you think is imputing improper motive?
He said that he said we can't, he said that we don't care about proper housing for the people of the Kalinago territory. That is not true.
No, but that's not imputing improper motive. That's his opinion.
That's not his opinion. He didn't
Yes.
say, he did not say it is my opinion. He said they are.
Mr. Speaker,
Senator,
is she disputing
No,
that the
Mr.
United
Bushman
Workers'
needs to come in,
Party,
and you have
of which
to-
she is part of, have said that when they get into government, they will turn the president residence into a cultural center?
That's not what I'm talking about.
You never
I'm
heard
talking
that?
about the housing.
Is it true that the leaders of the opposition said that they will stop the housing revolution when they get in? Do you know about that?
I am talking about the housing in the Kalinago territory.
Senator, the
Mr.
minister
Speaker.
is on his feet. Continue, Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we sat here, Mr. Speaker, she debated, Mr. Speaker, her half hour. We gave her more time. Not once did she mention the revolution in housing in the Kalinago territory. Not once did she mention 10 units completed in 2019-2020, 10 units ongoing, 10 units in Concord, 10 units in Sineku, 50 houses under the European Union funded project, 50 over, Mr. Speaker. What can be more important? What can be more brazen? What can be more blatant? Over 100 homes for the Kalinago people being built by this government. And there is a senator who in all her contribution, Mr. Speaker, in all her contribution with extra time, never mentioned the fact that she was happy or just mention it that the Kalinago people are getting over 100 resilient homes in the Kalinago territory. Mr. Speaker, and one time I put in proper motive. That is why you must come and prepare yourself to debate and stop walking in and out of the parliament. You don't have to be afraid of me. You don't have to be afraid of me, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, the leader of the opposition, in his contribution, 1 hour and 36 minutes, he stated trying to ramp up the score in this country using a 64,000 figure. Only he knows where that figure came from. Because when you look at the estimates for this year, it speaks to $384,000. Last year's estimate spoke to $544 for the Prime Minister's residence, its maintenance and its operating costs. The year before, the estimate spoke to $566,000. Because, Mr. Speaker, we were in the process of finding new residents for the Prime Minister, that figure was reduced to $387,000. And they add another $300 to it and make it. But there is no reference to any other $3,000 in the estimates. If this is not malicious and deliberate, then what else it is? Tell me what it is. Mr. Speaker, 384, that is what's been budgeted for, and any other sums that will be appropriated to the Prime Minister's residence will have to come to this Parliament via supplementary estimates. But through supplementaries. So you have to wait and see whether we bring in any measure here in the Parliament for supplementary estimates to add to the Prime Minister's residence, Senator Sanford. That is how it's done. You can't preempt what will happen. You have to deal with the facts in front of you as is. And Mr. Speaker, That is what this leader of the United Workers' Party is using to intimidate, to drive fear, and to instill fear in the people of Dominica. Don't forget, this guy was working for Stanley and Partners. Stanley and Partners is a close associate to Cambridge Analytica. Cambridge Analytica is an Henley and Partners. Cambridge Analytica is an outfit that specializes in mind-boggling tactics to get people to believe what does not exist, to get people to see things that they don't see, Mr. Speaker, and to get people to form opinion on matters that are not true and factual. And this is what the leader of the opposition spending all his time doing to see how we can manufacture untruths. But Mr. Speaker, tell us, Senator Sanford, tell us about the $12,000, the $2,000 that is given to your elected PAL reps every month for their constituency offices. Mr. Speaker, there is no big sin and no little sin, you know. It's not big sin and little sin. All sin is sin. So you believe because it's a big figure, 1.2, is worthy of recognition, but $2,000 is okay. It's fine. Where is the money? Why are the offices not open? Why don't they have secretaries in the offices? Where are the secretaries? Mr. Speaker, why is it that the leader of the opposition does not come to this parliament and tell us whether he did or he did not get the money that he was selling our diplomatic passport for on the Al Jazeera tape? Mr. Speaker, aren't you concerned about that part? No, I guess not. Because you stood to benefit from it, so you don't care. You don't care. Your party stood to benefit from it. Because it was supposed to be for campaign expenses, for motorcades and for T-shirts and for flyers, of which you, and PA systems and transports, of which you, Senator Sanford, will have benefited from. So you have no problems with that. You have no problems with that. Mr. Speaker, that is the level of hypocrisy using the parliament to cause rancor and to cause problem in our country. Mr. Speaker, when we're going for a COVID period, when the whole world, Mr. Speaker, the whole world, Erica was bad, Maria was bad, but we were affected, and we had friends overseas who could come to assist us. COVID is different. Everybody getting hit, Mr. Speaker. We cannot continue to depend on our friends and our acquaintances, although they've been coming through for us. Mr. Speaker, that is why COVID may well end up being worse than Maria in that regard. Mr. Speaker. And so, Mr. Speaker, that the opposition has failed in its duty to offer any sort of hope to the people of this country. Where is your stimulus package? What would you do if you were here in this COVID period? What would you spend the money? That is what you had to go and articulate in your budget response. That is what? You're lazy. Who have you spoken to about the budget? Have you kept any meetings with the IC? Have you kept any meetings with the Hotel and Tourism Association? Have you kept any meeting with the private sector? Have you spoken to youth groups and NGOs? No, you've done zero work. Zero work. And you're here just to show off your pretty little self. You're just here to show off yourself. You don't come here to do no work. You come here to lime. But it's not a place where people are lime. Go and find some work for you to do. You don't come here to lime. We don't lime in the parliament. When you come to parliament, you come to do hard work. And the hard work is to see how we can relieve our people, what measures that can be taken as a country collectively to ensure that we can ease up the pressure on our people. But you see what? The problem that you have, Dominicans are happy people. And not we who said that. Internationally, we recognize as one of the happiest people in the world. Happiest people in the world. With all our stress, with all our problems, we are happy people because we know that we have a government that cares. We have demonstrated that, not only in this budget, but our whole action has been a demonstration of the love and the compassion for our people. And that is why they'll continue to have faith in the Dominican Labour Party and put their trust in the Dominican Labour Party. And that is what this budget is doing here today. These measures. And let me tell you something. You see this digital economy? Don't take chances with that. Because just last weekend I was hearing the governor of the central bank, Kasani, saying that those of us who are not on board with this digital economy, we're going to have problems. because the whole world is moving in that direction. And we have chosen some of the brightest brains in Dominica to deal with this subject matter. That is where the young people have an opportunity to shine. That is where the young people have an opportunity. That is why we borrowed $75 million from the World Bank to ensure that we could be part of this digital economy. That is where you should be focused on. That is what you should be thinking about. That's what you should be thinking about, Mr. Speaker. In agriculture, in tourism, this whole budget is an endorsement of our young people. And what even with the public service too, Mr. Speaker. Public service. We have been empowering young people. Look at our PSs. Watch our PSs. Young people, watch our doctors. Young people. We're not afraid to take chances with our young people. We're not afraid to empower our young people. We're not afraid to give our young people opportunities to put the economy and the country in their hands. That is why, Mr. Speaker, I can retire comfortably knowing that my country is in safe hands. When I look across and I see these young faces, I want to warn them, though, that they only have 15 years to deliver, because things are changing so rapidly that in 15 years, they will become obsolete like me, Mr. Speaker. So, Kasani boy, you only have 3 terms, you and Melissa. 3 terms, all you have to do it. By 2035, you guys will contest no election. You guys will contest no election. You guys will be gone. So, time is not on your side. You have to deliver these goods to the people of this country. We have trained and educated our people. Oh, they say we had too many this and too many that. And now she wants us to bung those people or stop training them. That's what the senator is trying to say. Stop training the youth. Because if you're not going to bung them, stop. But no, we'll continue to train our young people and to empower young people and to put the country in their hands, because we're confident that we've done the work that will allow them to take this country from where we, Ian and Blackman, myself, and where the rest, Rosalind Paul and Lady D, from where we live in this country, our country has been placed in the safest hands in this country. Senator Sanford. That is what we're here for. That is what this is all about. Mr. Speaker, much has been said about housing. Every minister is a minister for housing in his own right, in his constituency. I'm very happy that the Prime Minister made me. They said, well, they're 4 ministers of housing. There are 10, I don't mind. Because housing is too important and too critical for the people of this country for us to be selfish with the housing portfolio. Mr. Speaker, I need more ministers. We need more ministers of housing. When they come, they'll bring money when they come.
20 more minutes.
They'll bring the money come. Mr. Speaker, on the MMC matter, Mr. Speaker, MMC came to Dominica when we had this crisis in Petit Savan. When the government was not sure how we're going to manage and handle the housing situation in Petit Savan. Over 354 units had to be built in Petit Savan. We had to cut down how many mountains to get suitable land for the housing in Petit Savan, Mr. Speaker. And MMC, Mr. Speaker, they came here to Dominica and they agreed to work, Ian. They agreed to work with no money. They agreed to front load, Mr. Speaker. They agreed to front load the money for the Petit Savan housing, and subsequently, remember that. Today, when we should be here singing these songs of praises for MMC, the United Workers' Party is trying to create a phobic situation in Dominica where every time you see an MMC project, you should fight with it. As we say that, Mr. Speaker, somebody in Grand Fort and La Plaine are interfering with the sewage system in the apartment buildings. 2 UV lights were stolen over the weekend. Now, in La Plaine and Grand Fort, we have waste treatment plants. It's not just the regular soakaway system. We have the waste treatment plants, and these have to be operated by electricity. So if we lose electricity and somebody go back and turn back on the system, we're going to have a problem. But somebody is interfering with the system, and I want to ask the Senator Francisca to please, let's do some work. Let's help the government. Let's help the people, please. Huh? You're not the police. You're not a police. But you're a police to go and see how much feeder road I need to fix, how much health center I need to fix, how much. But you're not a police to go out there. Well, you're not a police to mingle with the people. Well, they hear you. You're not a police. So you have nothing to do with the development of La Plaine, Delis, and Botica. You get in your little salary, you get in your change, you get in your money, you retire, you have 3 retirement, you have 3 pension, you have no problems with that. You have no problem with that. You're not a police. Ken boy, you have problems, Ken. You have problems. Mr. Speaker, I just wanted to make that little announcement and to appeal to the people who are vandalizing the units there to take it easy, stop, not do it. Mr. Speaker, we have already constructed over 925 homes under the MMC development project. Mr. Speaker, in Belleville-Chopin, we have done the 355 in Castle Bruce, Grand Fond, Daly, Santivelle, La Plaine, Cotton Hill, Grand Bay, Stock Farm, and Georgetown. And we have to come, Mr. Speaker, Girondale, Woodford Hill, Scott said, Trafalgar, Roseau City Square, Mr. Speaker. That would take us to about 1,200 by the end of this financial year in terms of completion of houses. Mr. Speaker, it's also interesting to note that the same opposition who complaining about no jobs and so on, Mr. Speaker, these projects create serious jobs for the people of Dominica. Like, for example, in Marigot, Mr. Speaker, we have about 68 skilled laborers working on that project. On the East Coast, Madam Speaker, we have about 57 contractors, Mr. Speaker. In Cotton Hill, we have about 55 local contractors. In Georgetown, we have about 65. On these health centers, Mr. Speaker, 2 other health centers from scratch to top were built by locals. A young man from Portsmouth, Paul Robin, Mr. Speaker. We built 2 of these health centers, Mr. Speaker, to debunk the fact that local people, and Mr. Speaker, materials purchased already in the sum of $29 million, Mr. Speaker, in terms of cement, aggregate, fuel, transportation. That is the contribution of those projects to the economy so far. $29 million, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Ace Engineering, a top-notch of the United Workers' Party, he picked up 10,000 on the PD7, $10 million he made on the PD7 project. And I can say to you, Mr. Speaker, that one of the other people, Stuco, is now doing the suites on the Anichi. He's been there for over a year, Mr. Speaker. He's doing the suites, have over 100 persons employed, running into the millions of dollars, Mr. Speaker. This is what my problem is. My problem is when the opposition make those statements, somebody must call and correct it. Somebody must say, I would like a little more. I have some, but I want more. I want all. You know what I mean? But just make a little call and say the information is erroneous. I have a contract there. I made a 10 million. I would like to make a 30, 40, 50 million, but at least I make a 10. Yes. But don't give the impression and do not let it pass. Do not let it pass that you're really not getting anything when every Friday you go into the bank with a big grin on your face, Mr. Speaker. You save money from those projects. And those projects are locally owned projects. The Anichi, the one in Salisbury, Gregor Nassif. Mr. Speaker, 90% of the projects under the CBI are locally owned and managed, Mr. Speaker. And then you want to say only foreigners getting jobs in this country, Mr. Speaker. And I won't have time, I won't go into the Chinese, I'll find my program and I'll deal with this war being waged by the United Workers' Party against the Chinese, Mr. Speaker. The same Chinese, they went to eat their food and drink their drink and drink their wine. The same Chinese, they promised that they will support the One China policy. They left here secretly to go to China, Mr. Speaker. They said in China, and they said they never realized the contribution that China was making to development of this country. That was a confession, Mr. Speaker. All of a sudden, you're saying China want to seize Dominica. All of a sudden, you're saying be careful with the Chinese because the Chinese will just take over our country. Well, what did they ask the Chinese for that you didn't get? What is that you wanted from them that they didn't give to you? That you have taken a right about turn, Mr. Speaker, and now preaching that you will walk naked in the streets of Roseau at the appropriate time for the Chinese not to steal Dominica. You are Lugao then, Mr. Speaker. Don't look out that does walk naked without clothes in the night or in the day, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, that's the hypocrisy. That's the hypocrisy of the United Workers' Party, Mr. Speaker. And then Senator Sanford will tell me I'm imputing improper motives. You sat here, blows passing on the government, scary cancer. He's a statesman. Nobody must respond. You guys can go on your radio and call for violence in the country. You guys can go on the radio and accuse the wife of the Prime Minister of a transaction that she had nothing to do with and said she defrauded the Treasury. Where were you to defend her sister when you know that was not correct? What did you have to say about this? You know it was not true. You didn't know. Well, find out. The facts are there. Find out. You never said nothing to come to defense. I hope she swore you and swore you proper. For defamation of character and misinformation. Mr. Speaker, it cannot be right. It cannot be right. You cannot abandon your legal processes to get in the government and decide you want to get to government by acts of war and acts of violence. What is this constant call for violence in this country? Go and fix your party. Your party falling apart. Our group of little girls are the same young people we're talking about. They get so frustrated with you that they're from their own party. Read between the lines. Yes, the APP, whatever that means, Alliance for Pretty People or some foolishness like that. You don't know about that one either. You don't know about the APP, but you don't know much. You sleep in too much, young lady. Mr. Speaker, the party falling apart under their watch. The leader promised, who want all your money, come and get all your money back. I ready to give all your money back. In any currency you want it, I have it. Come for it and get your money back. When the little fella told them that I'd worry about this 1.2 million, a billion. Further, I told that wasn't going to work, leave that alone. That is not true. He insisted, Mr. Speaker, on a bunch of lies. You want to move a government, you want to move a country to civil war on lies and innuendos. How can that be real? How can that be fair? On innuendos and misinformation, like on $64,000 for the Prime Minister's residence. You want to bring people out on the street on a matter that is not a fact, that cannot be proven, that is nowhere in the records of the cabinet or the parliament. You want to bring people out in the street for civil war in this country. That is what you're calling for in this country, a country that has gone through so much, beaten, bruised, battered, and now this poor Labour Party government doing what it can to bring peace and tranquility, to continue the programs, the social programs, the social safety nets, to make sure people are not hit and bombarded with what the whole world is being bombarded with, Mr. Speaker. And rather than you put a helping hand, or just stay quiet. Just stay quiet. Don't say nothing. Go and hide. Let us do our work. Come out there. Let us do the work of the people. Let us do the work of the people, Mr. Speaker. That is where it's at.
10 more minutes.
Yes, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, no, I'll tell you. Mr. Speaker, the member for Portsmouth spoke about fish. And he was right. He is right. I'm not sure about he right about pelagic or non-pelagic. I don't know what that is. I don't know what that is. But what the member was saying, Mr. Speaker, with the intervention of this government since Hurricane Maria, we brought the fish down here because we were the ones who invested in over 50 fads. If you know what that means. Over 50 fads at $5,000 a fad. We brought the fads down, and that is where the fishermen stay. They're sleeping, they're getting up on the fads. That is where the tuna coming out. It's not no tuna that's floating all over the place. On the fad that the government provided for the fishermen. That is where we're getting all the fish from. On the boats and the engines, Mr. Speaker, we gave to them. After Hurricane Maria, we spent over $2.6 million giving out to fishermen, 365 small fishermen and 165 larger fishermen getting $10,000 and $3,000. That is what we gave to them. And it's not World Bank that gave it to them. It's not World Bank. It's the government of Dominica. It's we who went to take the loan. It's a loan. We have to pay back for it. When the Prime Minister went to Washington, the housing is the government that has to pay back for it. So there's no World Bank program. The program is a government program. That is why the minister could say. That is why the minister could say. And I don't have time to read the whole document. I can pass it over to you to see what contribution that this government has made to ensure that today we have an abundance of fish. That during COVID, we were exporting fish to our neighboring islands who couldn't go there and catch fish for themselves. We are exporting fish now as a result of the support that this Labour Party government has given. Clap loud, let everybody hear you. Stand up and clap. Don't clap in secret there. Stand up, yeah. Put down on your head like so and clap. Yes. They're talking nonsense about it's not Ian that bring the fish. Who bring it? Ian that bring the fish down. Ian that bring the fish. Because of the support that he gave to the fishermen in Portsmouth, is Ian that bring it. Mr. Speaker, that is why today we have an abundance of fish in this country. And this business about these teachers telling you about less money. Mr. Speaker, you're a businessman. When you catch the fish at $10, you have to go around the country. By the time you reach back to base, you spend half of the money on gas, the other half on the hire. In fact, you're better off. Sell your fish where you catch it at a lower price and remove all these overhead expenses you have. By basic common sense. Talking about they poorer today than they were yesterday. Man come back with fish spoiling on man. They can't sell it. They have to trade for dashing. When they go to a certain village, the Prime Minister there, so I won't say which village, is food for fish. Dashing and yam for fish. You understand? When come up with basket of provision, they have to give away the fish. Because they can't sell it. But they stayed in the village. People come in for it at that price. Catch the fish, cut it, sell it, your work done. Give somebody else the headache to go and deal with it. It's through the efforts of this government that we have this abundance of fish in this country, not through no effort. Under the World Bank project, while with the World Bank, the important thing about the World Bank is when that World Bank housing project started, it was a project for $85,000 and your home had to be 300 square meters. After the financing agreement was signed, our Prime Minister, that doesn't happen anywhere, my brother. When the World Bank signed off on an agreement, it's signed, sealed, and delivered. The Prime Minister continued negotiations until he was able to raise it to $125,000 per home and 500 square feet for a house. After the financing agreement was signed through negotiations, that is why today, over 4,000 families will receive homes under the World Bank project. And the Kalinago territory will also benefit from that. Clap, clap, clap. Clap, clap, clap. You didn't know? Will also benefit from that, Mr. Speaker. And that tells you of the extremely good relationship that we have with the World Bank. Extremely good relationship. And that's no favorite.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the Honourable Minister be granted an additional 10 minutes to complete his contribution to the budget.
Seconded, Mr. Speaker.
It has been moved and seconded that the Honourable Reginald Austri be granted an additional 10 minutes. Those in favour? Aye. Those against? Honourable Minister, you are given an additional 10 minutes.
Yeah. Mr. Speaker, just quickly, I want to deal with the issues of land acquisition because, and that comes for the airport where we have to acquire over 400 acres of land for the airport. We have concluded negotiations. I have the figures here somewhere. We have concluded negotiations with 196 landowners. 25 of them have been approved. Crop compensation, we're now looking to pay from $300,000 in crop compensation. And also the Kalinago territory, Mr. Speaker, where we'll be paying the farmers $115,000 crop compensation and $1.7 million for their lands. The important thing about that, Mr. Speaker, is that will be money which will be circulated in the economy, in the local economy. So over pretty close to $2 million under the DVRB project. Apart from getting a road, the residents, which is almost everybody in Carrick Territory, will be getting some money, and you can see some improvement in the life. I hope I didn't see your name on the list. I didn't see your name, Senator Sanford, on the list. So, but we can talk if you were forgotten, because everybody who will be impacted, they get in. So we're not discriminating. Red, blue, green, everybody getting money. I'm Senator Sanford. So I needed to make that point, Mr. Speaker. And in that vein, I would really, really love to thank, Mr. Speaker, our London Service Division and our valuation unit. They have been on the road, Mr. Speaker. No sooner do they brief from one project, they have to move from the constituency of Dennis Charles, where we survey land and valuing land for the health center and the homes in Scott's Head and Point Michelle. They have to run back to the airport site to work, and they have to run to Ansdime to do the evaluation for the health center for Ansdime, and then they have to run to Point Michelle to do the surveys and evaluation for Point Michelle and for the health center in Soufriere. So, I mean, these guys are constantly moving from one end of the country to the other end of the country, trying to get all those projects tied up so we can see some real changes in the fortunes of our country. There was somebody saying that healthcare is not a sign of alleviation of poverty. Was that I heard the Freedom Party leader say? That we must link the budget to the, so housing is not an indication of getting out of poverty. Sanitation is not an indication of the alleviation of poverty. I mean, healthcare is not an indication as the alleviation of poverty. I mean, putting monies at the banks for people to secure loans for small business, or to reduce the duties on lands for young people to build their homes. That is not linking the budget with alleviation of poverty. What's wrong with this guy? Smoke a little too much this morning. You see that marijuana thing, all you get involved in all yourself there? While I support it, I support it. But that's not for everybody, because men already smoking a little thing illegally and getting a high and talking foolishness. You can imagine when man can walk in the street. Anyway, let's leave that there. Let's leave that there, Dr. Darrow, let's leave that there. But we have to fix that, because them fellas will endanger themselves. Man like Vita will kill himself. The boy become an endangered species. So you have to control the substance and the amount of substance. Because you can't sit down on the radio as a leader of a political party and talk that level of rubbish and stupidness. And you're still getting people to clap and say, hey. I mean, you guys heard the guy? Oh, me alone, I hear that. No, man. Mr. Speaker, the cottage constituency is well, fine. Tourism, Dennis, Charles, we need to finish the restaurant and bar in Kana. Yesterday and Monday and Saturday, Tukari Beach was loaded. Ian, you passed? Yes. Oh, you passed, Roslyn? Loaded. Tatan Bell Hall, by Titin, loaded. By Mali, loaded with people, and that every weekend. So we just need to ensure that we can keep the place clean and so on, and with some support from you. And we believe that tourism really is the way for us to go. Educational students are studying overseas. We have students studying overseas. In terms of all the goodies handed out by the government, we're not left behind. We got our packages for COVID, everybody got packages for COVID. So we need our roads. I mean, for you guys who saw the road from Kempinski, from the junction there to Kempinski, that piece of highway there, so that is going on nicely. Our community roads, the roads from Lagos right through PSS, and going back there, all that has been concreted up to Bucky and Fish right by Wabi up there, that has been properly concreted. In Gillett, we just finished the Reunion Lane, and the whole road to Gillett has been concrete. So we're not left behind in the scheme of things. I don't go and ask for additional things. I know when the Prime Minister leaving, he don't help out in my constituency, I don't help him out too. We have that relationship, I go up there, get a couple votes for him, he come down, he get a couple votes for me. So we have a relationship where I can really talk to him. I like to talk to him in the Parliament. I can talk to him outside of the Parliament. That's right. And we can... That's right. No,
So see, fellas say because I be MSc, why not making noise for things? But if I have the boss right next to me, it's easier for him to get to Penville than to get to Portsmouth to contact Ian. So it's also like 5 minutes in Penville by his home, so we can sit there and we can talk. He have a couple of things working on for me in terms of improving the healthcare systems, because as you know, right now we have to go to Georgetown and so on, so we're working on that. Our sports, we have our basketball court, Dr. Darrow, you were right. Mine looking just like yours. It's not as good as yours, but mine looking like yours. The same person who did it, and I must thank Regis, because he came, we have our glass backboard too, we fence up, and we're looking all right. We have the Lamov playing field there. Again, I can build the playing field, I can build the sporting facility, but I can't take you there to play. You have to organize yourself in a formidable group, and for the maintenance and the upkeep of the field, and you must put yourself together. Fishing coming back, those who in Tukari know there's about 5 or 6 boats out there, We want to restrict it to fishing. We're working on that. I think we should get them guys to get involved in a cooperative and to ensure that we can revive. Tukari was always fishing, but we normally did bala and zofi and whitefish, and kai and so on. So it's coming back now. Many of the young fellas now beginning. We have our jetty, a little bit of tourism, a little bit of us, and the marina will be in Lago. Ian, we don't have to fight over that. I'll give you half. I'll take half. I'll give you half. I'll take half. And of course, we have the jetty in Purple Turtle right there. The Pace fellas there. That is coming nicely. Then we have to get the Broadwalk. Our apartment buildings, these are not just residential buildings, but this is part of the tourism infrastructure. Because many people who come to Belleville want to walk up the road and go and see what hotel is that. People asking what hotel is that up there, And those is residences for the people. We have some small issues to deal with in all the apartments, the upkeep of the apartments. We have to set up this committee that will oversee the maintenance and the upkeep of those buildings. We have to have it on 2 fronts, a local committee that will really manage and maintain themselves, but we need a government committee to go down there and to inspect and to supervise and to make, some of these people really, in all honesty, they had no homes. They lived in broken down shacks, and it took them a little while to reorient themselves. And that is the beauty, of what this government has done for poor people, People who never dreamt or thought that they would ever leave. People have been living in broken down shacks with their 4 or 5 children and their boyfriends, 1 bedrooms with pool bar and so on. And this government has turned everybody into a millionaire in this country. Because these homes cost about $300,000 for a 2-bedroom, about $330,000 for a 3-bedroom. So really, and any fraction of $1 million is $1 million. So $250,000, $500,000, $750,000, $1 million is $1 million. It's $1 million. So all these people with these 2 bedrooms, they are millionaires or would be millionaires. Because when you add the value of the land to it and you add it, they're almost in $500,000 and climbing. That is what this Labour Party has done, Senator Sanford. We have taken men from paupers to riches, from rags to riches, just in housing. And imagine when we get the health going and the jobs going. Oh, what a wonderful world this is going to be. Oh, what a wonderful place this will be. People already wanting to come and stay here and to live here in Dominica. And we have not even touched the tip of the iceberg. And that is why this budget promises to do that for the people of Dominica. It promises to empower our young people at all levels. At the levels of business, at the levels of tourism, at the levels of the public service, but at the political level. We will be the ones driving the $75 million digital economy. We will be the ones driving, well, not me, you will be the ones driving the blue economy under Fidel Grant and the new innovations in agriculture. In tourism, it will be you, Dennis. In health, Dr. Mark Young too, so you're part of the youth brigade of the Dominica Labour Party. And so Bonnie, we have to talk, me and you will have to talk. I'm Shakira, and so Mr. Speaker, I think we're in a good place. I think we're in a lovely place. And if the opposition want to be relevant, if they want to be counted, if you, Sanford, want the little time you have as a senator, you have 3 years or 4 years, I believe you should make your mark. I believe you should leave something that the Kalinago people could be proud of. I believe you should join that crusade, join COSIA, and ensure that all you can combine all your energies to continue the process that we have started in transforming the lives of the Kalinago people, in making the Kalinago people who they're supposed to be, who they should have been. Move them away from the days of concours and rum. We're moving them from that culture and move them to a culture of entrepreneurship, of decent housing, of education, of good health. That is what we want for the Kalinago people. For my people, I'm a Kalinago too. Watch my hair. You can see that. I'm a Kalinago too. I have Kalinago blood in me. And goes on to see our people move forward. And I know that by the time I finish, Senator Sanford will join. Embrace her. Embrace her. You know, you fellas are already. But let her come. Welcome her into this little circle. Leave Linton alone. Linton don't have nowhere to go. Linton is way out. You have nowhere to go. Linton can carry you. You stayed there in the parliament. Your leader. You made your contribution. He was never there to support you. He was outside. Your first budget debate. You know, the other little fella from Vickers, I congratulated him. He started to look at the chloride. He took out the mohawk on his head. Now he started to look at the chloride. No. Look today, he's not there.
You have to say the senator,
Mr. Speaker, with these few words, Mr. Speaker, with this short intervention, Mr. Speaker, I want to once again lend my full support to this budget, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
I think everyone has completed the debate, so I recognize the Honorable Prime Minister, the Honorable Roosevelt Skerrit, to wind up.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let me, first of all, express my sincere thanks and appreciation to the voters of the Vickers constituency, who, for a 5th consecutive term, have demonstrated their confidence and trust in me as their parliamentary representative, and have sent me back to the parliament as a member of parliament. These are very special people, Mr. Speaker, people who at age 26, 27 voted for me as a member of parliament. And just to say, Mr. Speaker, that I have not had a public meeting during the election campaign in that constituency since January 2000. They have campaigned and they have mobilized people and what about to vote, and we have seen an increased number of people voting for us every election in that constituency. And so the relationship which we have is an exceptional one, and I dare say, Mr. Speaker, that they are their own builders. They get guidance from me, but they are engaged. The youth, the elderly, the women, the men, and I want to express my sincere gratitude to them. And of course to the majority of Dominicans. They have sent us here in the parliament with over 80% of the seats in the parliament, a 5th unprecedented term of office for the Dominican Labour Party. And it shows that notwithstanding all of the efforts to destroy this country, all of the efforts to destroy my character and so on, the people of Dominica, the vast majority of Dominicans, continue to support Roosevelt Skerrit as their Prime Minister and the Dominican Labour Party as a government. Because, Mr. Speaker, they know who cares for them. They know who genuinely loves them. And they know that in a time of crisis, which leader they can rely on. That when there's a time of crisis, they go to bed and they wake up, they know that Roosevelt Skerrit will be there standing with them and standing for them and ensure that they are taken care of, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, you know, this is a budget in an unprecedented era, unprecedented period. In the vast majority of countries, you're talking about cuts in salaries, cuts in expenditure. In the United States, they're still debating in the House of Representatives about a second stimulus package to assist people who have stopped getting the unemployment benefit. Because the $3 trillion which they got have been exhausted. And 6 million people in America, 6 million families in America are relying on food stamps to survive. 32 million people have been at the doors seeking unemployment benefits. 32 million. And you have seen what we have done. When people were hoping for the worst for Dominica, doom and gloom where COVID-19 was concerned, we did not get scared, Mr. Speaker. We went into planning mode, preparatory mode. And we prepared the country based on our experience in leading this country and going through disasters. To the point where today, the international health system, independent arbiters, are recognizing the efforts of this Dominican Labour Party in its management and containment of COVID-19. And you would have thought that we came here with a budget, Mr. Speaker, and people were wondering, well, look, is Kerry going to call election this year? Because the measures which are contained in this budget, Mr. Speaker, in this period, nobody expected that. Nobody expected that. And when you listen to the other side, Mr. Speaker, it tells you that these people do not care about people. They don't understand how people live, and they're not interested in how people live. That you would have thought they would have come here and presented counter proposals as to how to stimulate the economy, how to sustain job levels in Dominica, how to grow agriculture, how to continue to improve the healthcare system. No. They're not interested in this. And the people who support them, the only thing that unites them is a hatred for Roosevelt Skerrit. That's it. Because they know that the leadership which they have is not the right one. This is why none of them on the opposition side or outside there, Mr. Speaker, would promote Mr. Linton as leader. They never mention him as leader. Because they know in their hearts and their minds and their soul and their bodies that he is not fit for purpose, Mr. Speaker. He's not fit for any kind of leadership, whether it's national, local. Not at all. He doesn't have it. He doesn't have it, Mr. Speaker, and they know that. But they will not speak to this. And so when you see this kind of budget and the provisions, the measures, the packages inside there, Mr. Speaker, it tells you that this team is fit for purpose. That this Labour Party team on this government side, Mr. Speaker, understands what governance is, understands what managing the affairs of the country is. And this came about, all of this came about, Mr. Speaker, based on a series of consultations which I held. A series of consultations along my cabinet colleagues, meeting with people, meeting with small business people, meeting with women, single parents, speaking with them, finding out how things are. What can the government do to help you? And these things came about because of our engagement. Our feet are on the ground. We know how people live, and we know what affects them, and we're working together with them to overcome those challenges. They come here and they speak about NEP. I mean, you know, if it's serious to be talking about the NEP and a program that they have denigrated, Mr. Speaker, a program which they have let the ordinary Dominicans feel, the people who are in the cleanup and beautification program feel that they're lesser human beings. Everybody who is employed under the cleanup and beautification program across the country, the United Workers' Party has seen you as less of a human being because you're doing a particular task. And you heard the senator, the deputy speaker, Honorable Roll, spoke so eloquently about this and put this into context. And to give the impression that these people are not of no value and what they're doing, they should do it. And I recall, Mr. Speaker, during the election campaign, prior to the announcement of elections, the now Senator Jonathan was in Guadeloupe
are denigrating the NEP. So they come here and talking about NEP. You said in your election campaign that you would end the NEP. It's a waste of time, waste of money, Mr. Speaker. This is why the people who are engaged on an NEP knows that for them to have kept a job, Mr. Speaker, because they were fearful of the miracles when they come into office because they were out of jobs. And this year, January to July, Mr. Speaker, we have spent $22.5 million in the NEP. Money is in people's pockets, Mr. Speaker, so they can take care of themselves. And all of these people are making a serious, constructive contribution to the economic and social development of our country. I have, from time to time, Mr. Speaker, my own constituency, joined the people with the cleanup and beautification program. I go there and I tell them how to plant the flowers. I help them plant flowers. I give them guidance. But no, they want to give people an impression that is bad work. And I hear talk about the Kalinago. Mr. Speaker, the Kalinago people know. They know that the leadership of the Labour Party, they know of his commitment to the Kalinago people, his genuine love and concern for the Kalinago people, Mr. Speaker. And when you look at the Kalinago territory, this is the first government that has ever given serious consideration to the Kalinago people in Dominica. Not one government before us, Mr. Speaker, gave one nail to a Kalinago to build his house. We had to go in the mountains to cut wood, saw wood to make our homes in the Kalinago territory. Have contraband of galvanized from Maryland to come cover our homes in the Kalinago territory. That's how we built our homes in the Kalinago territory. And you see him saying, we, Mr. Speaker. That's how we built our homes. I recall, Mr. Speaker, the first time a government built homes in the Kalinago territory was 2003. I wrote a project, Mr. Speaker, I got 25 homes. I took 15 from my constituency, and I gave Kelly Grano, the then Member of Parliament, 10. And I went there myself to help build the homes. That's the first time. An unprecedented number of students have had access to university because of the Dominican Labour Party in the Kalinago territory. The record shows, Mr. Speaker, that before Labour came into office, less than 1% of high school graduates in the Kalinago territory had access to the college. Today, it is 100% because of the Dominican Labour Party. Because of the Labour Party. We sold homes to public officers in the Kalinago territory, homes which cost $175,000 for $30,000, Mr. Speaker. $30,000. People can sleep comfortably. Yes, we have to build more homes, and that is why in this budget they're getting close to 100 new homes. 100 new homes. What did the leader of the president say in his contribution for the Kalinago people? What did he say? What plans and programs he has in his budget for the Kalinago people? Zero. Nothing, Mr. Speaker. Nothing. Nothing. That's a party, a workers' party. Where were you, Senator? Were you there? When the Workers' Party said they could buy the Kalinago people for glass of rum and conkers, disrespecting the indigenous people, the people who fought for the defend Dominica, the people who defend the Dominica. A party that wants to be a government is speaking about the indigenous people that way. And you come and tell me you're associating yourself with that and you call yourself a Kalinago? Tell me, Mr. Speaker, tell me. These people are only interested in themselves. They are not interested in people. Not interested in people. Tell me, this is the record, any road you see with concrete on it in the Congo territory, Labour put it down. Labour put it down. We elevated this international status of the Congo chief by granting him a diplomatic passport, so when he travels, he can travel in the diplomatic line and not be harassed. That's what Labour did. User fees. When the Workers' Party was in office, they imposed a user fee on the whole of Dominica, especially the indigenous people of Dominica. And many of them died because they could not go and pay the fees at the hospital. That is why when I became Prime Minister, I'm working for the Congo territory, I'm seeing a man sick in his bed. Sick in his bed. Because he's owing. And Mr. Speaker, it is there. The decision of the government to remove user fees first for the Congo people was born. No user fees for them. And you're telling me that you're denying people, poor people, indigenous people, access to health care? $79 million, Mr. Speaker, will be spent in the Congo territory, in the Salibé constituency, under the East Coast project. $79 million will be spent. We're finalizing plans for a purpose-built hurricane shelter for the Congo territory as well. The improvements to the cassava industry there. Labour has invested in there. Only party that's really invested in the Congo territory is the Dominican Labour Party. So, and Mr. Speaker, I am the only leader in the country who the Congo Council and the Chief gave an award because of my contribution and my love and affection for the Congo people. Only. And so, this is why they voted for Labour a fifth time. And whenever elections are called, the Congo territory, the Salibé constituency, will be back with the Dominican Labour Party. So, when you come here and talk about Congo territory and so on, Labour is the one doing this for the people, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as Minister Austri said, these guys were speaking so much outside there about COVID-19 and stimulus, and you really thought that these guys would have gotten something. Senator Sanford is talking a lot this morning because they may have sent her to disturb Austri. And if that's the task they give you as a young lady, it tells you how the leader sees you. It tells you how the leader sees you. To send you as a young lady to disturb a member speaking, that's how they see you, my friend. That's how they see you, a Congo young lady, sending to disturb somebody and being unladylike in the house. Come on. You need the tutelage of Roosevelt's spirit as a leader, not Lennox Linton. That's what you need. These guys just use people when they don't have use for you. They kick you, they spit on you. That's what these guys do. You know that. They've done it to your people. They've done it to your people and they'll do it again. And you dare, hoping that you played, I don't understand what happened in his house, Mr. Speaker. I don't know. And then you have a member of parliament, leader of the opposition, leading demonstration about Marigot Hospital. Leading demonstration on Facebook, everything. The roof has been poured, Mr. Speaker. So the superstructure is completed. And you have not visited the place once? A health center was completed, painted, tiled, everything, Mr. Speaker. And you never visited once? Houses are being built in Sam's Gutter. You never visited there once? But he up Monroos. He and a Jura guy up Monroos, taking pictures where Skerrit was staying as Prime Minister so he can post on Facebook. Taking pictures to post on Facebook. You drive up Monroos. You can't go Marigot to take a pictures to put on Facebook. That's where Skerrit was staying. That's this guy's contribution. Mr. Speaker, it is written that many are called but few are chosen. That speaks about vocation. To represent people, Mr. Speaker, it is a vocation. You don't come into politics looking for a job. It's a vocation. And so when these people say things in their position and people find them strange, they're not strange because they're not there for the reason that people are in Parliament for, to represent the interests of people, to empathize with people. They don't understand people's struggles and people's sufferings and frustrations. They don't understand that. Because that is not their interest. They're looking for a job. They're looking for a job. Look at them, my brothers. They're looking for a job. That's what it is. You know, and they're attacking the Chinese government. Mr. Linton now is attacking Al Malbro, who was his best friend. He went to take a picture in Washington with the man. He drank the man coffee and the man tea. And the man told Al Malbro told him that he will deliver the elections to him as they did in Bolivia and so on. And because Al Malbro did not deliver the elections to him, he now turning against Al Malbro. He chastised Al Malbro, the Secretary General of the OAS now. So Mr. Linton has now turned on Al Malbro. But what Al Malbro and the OAS don't understand is that the Labour Party support is the people movement. This is not, I keep telling people, Mr. Speaker, I keep telling people, I reference the quotation from Toussaint Louverture when he was captured by the French. In seeking to free the Haitian people, he said, by killing me, you're cutting the trunk of a tree. The roots shall sprang up, and the revolution will continue, Mr. Speaker. So, attacking me, my friends, that doesn't faze me. I'm a man of peace and love, but people must not believe that they can say what they want and do what they want. So, attacking me is fine. I don't bother by this. I don't lose over that. What caused me to stay up at night is people who I know are still in need of help in Dominica. That's what keeps me up at night. Nothing else. And so, they are not interested in anything, Mr. Speaker. They're not interested in it. And now, CBI, everything they attack. So because the Chinese government says they're going to help us in the airport, they're attacking the Chinese government. I mean, how can you go in a man's house? You eat the man's food. The man gave you clothes. The man makes some suits for you, put clothes on you. And then when you go out to the man's house, you stone in the man's house, Mr. Speaker. These guys have no principles. And the little that they have, they negotiate it, Mr. Speaker. You must stand for something. You must believe in something. And if somebody is your friend, you must stand with your friend, Mr. Speaker. You will tell them privately where they go wrong. But you must stand with them. There must be sincerity. We don't play games with any government. We don't play games with them. We don't play games with people, period. We don't play games with them. And so they're attacking the government of China. A government, a people that has stood by the people of Dominica for so many years. You're attacking them. A tells you what these people, who these people are. Their fabric, their makeup. It tells you who they are. And I can see how disgusted the senators are on the other side, because they're just looking at it. It's painful for them. And they're asking themselves, well, what I put myself in is my retirement age in this way. Because I know they love me, Mr. Speaker. You see these two ladies there, they love me a lot, Especially the one from Good Hope. She loves me. You see that? I tell you that. Mr. Speaker, that is the thing. No guidance. You have a speech, Mr. Speaker, when I prepared the first draft of the budget address, I take it to the cabinet. Every one of them saw it. They read it, they give a comment, they tell Skerrit to take that out, they say Skerrit put that in, and I go by instructions, Mr. Speaker. None of them contributed to Mr. Linton's budget response. None of them. And neither did Mr. Linton see their contributions. None of them. Any standing order 44-4? No, 44-4. Imputing improper motives? No? Okay, I good. I good. So that one true. That one true, Mr. Speaker, because I'm not imputing any improper motives, Mr. Speaker. That one true. Nothing. Where's the team? Where's the team? Because you see, Mr. Speaker, you will always have a team, but the leader must provide guidance to the team, Mr. Speaker. The leader must provide guidance to the team. And the UWP is bereft of a leader, Mr. Speaker. It's a disappointment at the highest order. And they know that, but because they want to get Skerrit out, they will say what they have to say. Mr. Speaker, $13 million over the next 3 years for small business people at 1% is something to proclaim. It's something to proclaim. The removal of excise tax and import duties on vehicles for tour operators and taxis, Madam Speaker, 40% import tax waived, 28% excise tax waived, Mr. Speaker, on vehicles, SUVs, buses, for people who are in the tourism business, Mr. Speaker. The manufacturers have gotten numerous messages from agro-processors and small manufacturers saying thanks. VAT and import duty waived on packaging and labeling material.
Three more minutes.
4 minutes. Or 20.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the Honourable Prime Minister be granted an additional 20 minutes in his conclusion to this budget debate.
It has been moved and seconded that the Honourable Prime Minister be given an additional 20 minutes. Those in favour? Those against? The ayes have it. Honourable Prime Minister, you have an additional 20 minutes.
Thank you. These are investments. Removal of import duties and VAT on packaging and labeling material. Removal of import duties and VAT on equipment and machinery, Mr. Speaker. For the manufacturers and agro-processors. That is what we're doing to help people, to create jobs, to sustain jobs, to grow the economy, especially in this time, Mr. Speaker. Pleasure crafts. People can bring them in, so we can have more entertainment, more facilities, more offerings for our visitors and locals alike. Create more jobs in that particular sector, Mr. Speaker. These are the things we're doing to help the economy. Farmers are happy. Farmers are saying that it's the happiest time they've had in their entire existence. They're saying, yes, Labour has spent money in the past agriculture, but now Labour really spending money. equipment, tools, planting material, money in their pockets, Mr. Speaker, to help with farm labor. They're getting this, and I must say the vast majority of them are spending it wisely, and I congratulate you for that. Mr. Speaker, we will be getting dozens and dozens of oddwood motors in the next week or so. We've ordered them. There should be on a boat now coming to give to fishermen, to empower fishermen across Dominica, Mr. Speaker. $75 million, Mr. Speaker. $75 million to move with the digital transformation of our economy. Opportunities for young people, opportunities for the whole of the country. $75 million at our disposal. That's what Labour is doing, Mr. Speaker. That's what we're doing, Mr. Speaker, to help the people of Dominica. And all of the other programs are still in place. Between January and July, Mr. Speaker, we gave out to the seniors 17 over $5.7 million. $5.7 million. Every month, Mr. Speaker, $800,000 is given to the senior citizens of Dominica with 17 over grant. And that is not including public assistance. That doesn't include, Mr. Speaker, the compassionate allowance, which many people receive. That's what we're doing for our people. This year we'll continue to help parents with school books and uniforms. The transfer grant will continue, $500 for every child who sat the national assessment exam. That's what we're doing, Mr. Speaker. So the records are there, Mr. Speaker. And now, I want to briefly, Mr. Speaker, talk about this discussion about the residence for the Prime Minister of Dominica. Now, let me make it clear to people. A couple of things. There's a citizen called Roosevelt Skerrit in his private capacity, and that citizen is also the Prime Minister of Dominica in a separate capacity, which is in the public office. Now, I have my home, Mr. Speaker. Roosevelt Skerrit is not homeless. And when I leave this office, I shall drive back to Vickers and live comfortably at my home in Vickers, Mr. Speaker. But it's not, and people who know me, Mr. Speaker, know my family, I'm not bothered by these things, about house and so on. I go to the UK, Mr. Speaker, we have an embassy there, a high commission there. We have a car, we have a driver. I don't bother myself with a car and driver. I jump on the black cab and I go on my business, Mr. Speaker. I go to the United States, I'm entitled to all sorts of security from Secret Service, and if the U.S. government solves the problem with transportation, I don't bother with that. I jump in a yellow cab and go to my business, Mr. Speaker. My humility as a person has not changed in any shape and form because I'm Prime Minister of Dominica. I go to Vickers, Mr. Speaker, I walk the streets in my little short pants, and my little slippers in my feet, like everybody else. That's me. And look, now my toilets again. My Toyota. So this doesn't faze me. I accept, like many people have accepted, that $42,000 in any currency is a lot of money, Mr. Speaker. That's not the point. Because if it is money that's the problem, the amount that's the problem, Mr. Speaker, as Minister Austri indicated, when the government rented a house to me in Belfast, it was less than $4,000. It was a lot of money. People say that's too much. When the government rented a house in Mount Daniel for about $10,000 EC, people said it was a lot. That's too much. So is it really money that's the issue? The cost that's the issue? What is it? Because I don't hear the same people raise concern about the government paying $36,000 a month to store fertilizer. $36,000 a month to store fertilizer. But nobody says anything about this. $25,000 a month to house the Creed. Nobody says that's too much. 15,000 to rent one floor in a building in town with one small washroom. Nobody says anything about this. So is it really money the issue? But what I will say to the people who, and including some of our own supporters, that when I leave this office, I will be a personal crusader, Mr. Speaker, of ensuring that this country and its citizens never expose a prime minister to that level of indignity that they have exposed him. That's not good. This is not about me. I always tell people, when I call any office, I call a prime minister in the region, anywhere in the world, I call a public office number, I say Skerrit on the line. I don't call myself Honorable Prime Minister or Mr. Prime Minister. School children, I don't want to call them Honorable Mr. Skerrit is my name. I encourage him to call me Skerrit, Mr. Speaker. That's me. But we shouldn't. And those who participate in this must understand that if something which is as simple as housing is too much for the holder of the office of the Prime Minister, what about all of you who are receiving homes free of charge from the government of Dominica? What are they saying about you? What are they saying about you? And they have said it. They have said that the homes we're building in rural Dominica, in Delis and La Plaine and Grand Fort and Saint-Sauveur, what of a high quality for the people? Because inherently in human beings, they compare their circumstances to that of others. But you see, Mr. Speaker, people who I've gone to school with, people who I've worked with, know me. I'm a person who put people first. Always put people first. At school, I would help guys with their homework, then I'll do mine. I have a bread. My partners from Mountain, Grand Bay, and so forth, and Pishlem, and Wetika, we would ensure that they also would have a piece of the bread. And sometimes I stay without. So that's how I grew up. That's me. And being in the office, the many prime minister of the country has not changed me. It has reinforced my need to be humble, Mr. Speaker. But we should, I will not be here for very long, Mr. Speaker, but we should never, as a people, expose our leaders to that level of indignity. Because housing is a basic need. You know, Mr. Speaker, when President Chavez was in office, you know, I used to go to Venezuela often and so on. And they would send an aircraft to pick me up. And then Chavez, he was buying planes, a new fleet of planes. And he offered a plane to me, a jet. And then the Cubans wanted to provide the pilots and the maintenance people to fly this plane. And I said no. I said no. But it is as if in this country, and then that people want a prime minister and ministers to be by the bus stop waiting for a ride and so forth. I mean, back in the 50s and 60s, we had official residencies for the leadership of this country. And in the second decade or the third decade of the 20th century, when we're supposed to be even more enlightened, that's the level of conversation we have in our country. And like I said, Mr. Speaker, it is not about the cost. Because if less than 4 was too much, if less than 10 was too much, then what is it? I'd like to hear from people as to what they think, what type of housing a prime minister should have in the country. Send the permanent secretary and the CAPSEC a note. How much do you think they should pay to rent a place? What's the maximum they should pay? Or should the prime minister go and build his home and then there's an allowance given to him? Tell us. Tell us. So, Mr. Speaker, in this budget there's so many exciting things. The abattoir, we've offered it to the private sector. In tourism, making great strides. Great strides, Mr. Speaker. And even in this COVID period, there are people who are showing interest in coming to Dominica. Obviously, we have to be careful how we allow people to come in. But people are now are recognizing, as they always done in the past, that Dominica is a safe place. The infrastructure that we put in, our commitment to build international airport, Mr. Speaker, and I believe in my heart that if we do not get the international airport in this term, this country will never get the international airport. They'll never get it. Our commitment to students, unparalleled in this country. You have to know somebody and if a particular surname to get grants from government. I went to university and paid through myself, Mr. Speaker. I didn't get $1 from the government. And today we're not only paying tuition fees for people, we're paying the rent for them. And in many instances, we're also helping them with air transportation, Mr. Speaker, paying the airfares to go back to school. And then people say government must do that. The question is, if government must do that, why the governments before Labour Party never did those things? If government must build homes, why no government ever built a home in Lapland constituency for the people? Why? We just have to go back, to 2001 Labour Party came to office. This place was backward, no roads, street lights, even my own constituency, Mr. Speaker, in Penville, when I came out as PAL rep, I don't think we had any street lights. Something so basic. So basic. When we came into office, less than 7% of high school graduates had access to college, which meant, Mr. Speaker, that 93 out of 100 students do not make it to the college in Dominica.
4 more minutes.
4 minutes, okay. Thank you. I feel my time going fast in that parliament tonight. You guys keeping a few seconds and that. So our track record is there. And so, Mr. Speaker, and then I heard the leader of the opposition talk about somebody threatening his life and so on. Let me tell him, as I said to him publicly, I want him alive. I need him alive. And I'm urging him to take his vitamins, Mr. Speaker, eat well, exercise here in his dog on his treadmill. And I am prepared, Mr. Speaker, to give him all the security I have and more to ensure that he remains alive, because he is one of the greatest assets to the Dominican Labour Party, Mr. Speaker. Greatest assets to this Labour Party, Mr. Speaker. And so look at them. No leadership. Leadership is important. Leadership is important. And they hate to hear that, Mr. Speaker. It's not about me. I don't even make things about me because I'm not in the process of self-boast. But leadership is important. And when you have new people the first time in Parliament, all of you, and you're not meeting as a team, you come into the most important agenda item of a Parliament, the budget. You never met together to discuss what you're going to present. Never. You left to all of you who are left to your own devices. And that is what we would have had as a government, Mr. Speaker. Can you imagine Mr. Lugay, the Member of Parliament for Roseau North, would have been the Minister for Tourism, Mr. Speaker? And Mr. Speaker, can you imagine that Mr. John, Honorable John, the Member of Salisbury, would have been the Minister of Foreign Affairs, International Business and Diaspora Affairs, Mr. Speaker? Because these are, and Mr. Linton as Minister of Finance, Prime Minister, let me tell you something. Mr. Speaker, being the Prime Minister of Dominica calls for a lot of diligence and commitment to hard work. And these are not qualities Mr. Linton is known for. He doesn't understand what hard work is. And that is why he can never speak about those things. Because he can't speak about education because he doesn't like to talk about education. He can't speak about hard work because he has not done any constructive work. He's a member of parliament. He's also in office. He has not sat in his office for a whole 5 years and 6 months, Madam Speaker, Mr. Speaker, to see one constituent. You know, I know all of them have regrets on the other side. But why put myself in that position? Myself wasting our time, embarrassing us every time like that. Why put myself in that? I know. But they have to take it, they have to stomach it. And that's what it is. And the Senator Sanford there is making a pitch to become leader of the party, of the UWP, and so forth. But yes, we got a strong case. But I don't think she has the qualities for leadership of a party at this time. Or a power rep and so on. The people of the Kanago constituency will always repose their trust and confidence in a party that cares about them. And that's what it is, Mr. Speaker. And I want to commend all of my colleagues there. Some of us are returning people, Mr. Speaker, so we're all in this thing. Lady D, Honorable Austri, Honorable Douglas, Honorable Blackmore, with an interesting color suit here today there. You see what I'm saying? Dennis was around with us for a stop. But when and of course, my little friend there from Peebush, Honorable Paul, the cultural lady there. Mr. Speaker, when you listen to these young people, Dr. Mark, Teacher Bonnie, Grant, who is usually quiet but very deep, Mr. Speaker. The Kanago chief with his professorial approach to providing his contribution, Mr. Speaker. I mean, Shakira, Honorable Shakira, Honorable Rivera, Honorable Edwards there, in his fiery and pointed contribution, Mr. Speaker. Honorable George, my fellow constituent from Penville there, Mr. Speaker. You're talking about Honorable Laville, very profound, Mr. Speaker. You're talking about here Honorable Greta Roberts, with a principle-like approach to presenting herself, Mr. Speaker, very organized and a decorum, Mr. Speaker. You're talking about Young Roll. I mean, listen to Young Roll there. How old are you, young man? 25 years. 25 years. You know, and then you have Honorable, I don't know, these days we're saying, they put in, it's supposed to be Honorable, well, Mrs. Roosevelt Skerritt. This thing, people change this thing these days and call it Honorable, so Honorable Minister Skerritt, member of Honorable Central. I mean, yeah, Kent Edwards the pointed fella. He tell you as it is straight. You know, you use few words, get the point. I mean, look at this. Mr. Speaker, I sat back and I relished in what I heard and I saw on display in this parliament on the government side. And they will tell you, Mr. Speaker, as young as I am, I challenge them to leadership positions, Mr. Speaker. I challenge them. Who among you will replace me at some point? I don't hide these things. We have to build leadership. We have to build people's abilities, Mr. Speaker. And that's what I do. That's what I do, Mr. Speaker. And what I know, that whenever I leave this office, that the leadership of this country within the Democratic Labour Party will be assured with so many of these bright people, committed people, people who love their constituents and the people, Mr. Speaker. The country's future is assured. When you juxtapose this against that of the opposition, Mr. Speaker, what do you have? What do you have? It's really, Mr. Speaker, as we say, chalk and cheese, Mr. Speaker. The coconut milk or...
One more minute.
That's what you have. So the Labour Party is the coconut milk, the coconut cream, as they call it, Mr. Speaker. And what do they have? I can't say that in Parliament, but it may be unparliamentary. On the political platform, I say what did. But you know what? When you grate the coconut, and then you have the thing left, you squeeze the milk from it, that's what we have on the other side, Mr. Speaker. I commend this budget to this honourable House, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the House be suspended until 3 p.m. this afternoon.
Seconded.
It has been moved that the House be suspended until 3 p.m. this afternoon. Those in favor? Those against? The House have it. The ayes have it, sorry. The House stands suspended until 3 p.m.